So if you were like, look, I don't want to spend much money, I want to start off, and I wanted to avoid speed lights, then going down the route of like a strobe that you plug into the wall for like £100 is crazy. That does like 90% of what you need. Sure, you can spend a lot more money and get other benefits like a little bit more consistency, a little bit more power, a little bit more controllability and TTL and yada yada yada, all that sort of stuff. But for the most part, in terms of you getting creative with lighting, for £100 strobe, it's gonna do a huge amount for you. Yeah, it
Yeah,
really
and
is.
if you want a little bit more flexibility, so you mentioned the 8200s or the 8200 Pro 2s that have just come out,
That's
even
right.
give
They got a
you a
modeling button
modeling
now.
light.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
so you can even do a little bit of video, or at least you have a modeling light. And
Do you know how much they are off the top of your head now?
they're in British pounds. I want to say they're in the sort of £250 region. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Yeah.
Something around that. I bought a couple of 8200 Pros a few years back to take with me on the plane. And I went to Norway to shoot Northern Lights and Vikings, on location
Wow.
portraits of Vikings, basically in their
Okay.
natural habitat in Northern Norway. Um, and I know it was nuts, but to be honest with you, I mean, you just have to imagine, like, we were tracking out, like, we went out to the Lofoten Islands, which is in the Arctic Circle, and we were tracking out to places that were pretty inhabitable, and we were tracking out there, with our Viking models and everything. Um, and so taking a couple of these 8200 Pros with us really made a difference because you could literally walk out into the flipping prairie,
Phenomenal. They're
right?
phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. You don't need any more than that
Mm.
at
I'd
all,
love to see the sales figures on those 8200s. I
Oh,
just, they must have sold
huge.
so many of them. There is not a person that I speak to that doesn't have at least one of them. It's crazy. So yeah,
Yeah.
to your point, they are excellent lights, and I think that if you had a little bit of extra cash to spend, and you
Mm.
were like, okay, I want something, I've got 200 or 300 to spend on a light, those 8200s. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they're always going to serve you well. And for the one of the main reasons that you've just mentioned is you can just throw them in your bag.
Yeah.
This is huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the battery power on those, they last absolutely forever. We were shooting all day long, and when I got back to our
That's
accommodation, I was
crazy.
like, oh, the batteries are still halfway. Unbelievable.
And
You know,
and that is a core benefit of flash over LED, right? For sure.
yeah.
Huge. Is the fact that they just go and go and go, right? I've got the Bowen's battery powered ones here, but they're flash. I mean, yeah, they just go all day, no questions asked, which is certainly not the case with LEDs. You just can't do it. Yeah.
So do you use LEDs exclusively now, or is it sort of a mix
Pretty
between?
much, yeah. I mean, and I'll say this: I used flash one time last year. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Now, I will caveat that and say that the rotolights that I use they have the unique ability to flash, right? And I say unique ability because I still think they're the only LED lights that can flash in full color, right? I think Godox, obviously um, took inspiration from other brands, and they
That's the
brought
way
out
to put it.
lights that could flash as well, but they
Mm.
didn't do it in color. So these road lights are still the only ones that can flash in color. So this is useful to me because I do a lot of long exposure work. I still do a lot of long exposure lighting, and I kind of need to have a flash in there somewhere to kind of keep the model crisp, right? So I'm doing that with these rotolights, which is just such a, I mean, I just can't tell you how incredible that is to have all of that and to flash in those 16 million colors as well is wild. But to your point there about last year, there was one shoot. It was a hair shoot I did in a salon,
Mm.
and I looked at because most hair shoots are done in the salon, and most salons are on the street, and that usually means that they have just this whole wall of just glass in front of them,
Yeah.
right? Which you can't block out. So I was kind of like, do you know what? I was kind of hesitant, just kind of hesitant as to. I just don't think it's worth the risk. Let me just take. Would you shoot it with strobes because of the power, right? And this is the biggest kind of pushback that I see from many photographers is power, right? Where is the power? can it compete? Can I use them? I shoot all over the place. And look, I think that it is a very real concern. Um, it is something to be mindful of. That being said, I just received a bunch of kit from Nanlite, who they just sent me a 500 watt head, right? And it's a full color head, and it does have an external ballast and that sort of thing as well. But for the most part, it's a strobe style head. It's 500 watts, full color, and I would say that it's coming into the realms of affordability, right? I mean, because there are heads out there now, 1200 watts, 1500 watts on film sets pretty regularly. I've certainly been in those situations where we have those heads, and the reason cinema needs those is because those heads need to be like 30 feet back there, right? You
Yeah.
can't have them in shot. Like, we need to shoot the scene. We're not doing a headshot here. We need to shoot the
Yeah.
scene. So on film sets and that sort of thing, we're starting to see these 1500 watt and up heads, LED heads, becoming a feature. And one of the kind of reasons that's happening on film sets and TVs is because they get a huge kind of kickback for carbon efficiency, right? So if they can reduce their carbon footprint, they can save a shit ton of money. So, before they were using like 10K tungsten heads and that sort of stuff. I mean, they just got like a diesel generator, just like 10 diesel generators just knocking about
Yeah.
outside. Like, yeah, they're running those 10K lights like all day. Like, it's a huge amount of power. Running tungsten like that was just colossal. So, in an effort to kind of combat this, there are kind of kickbacks to be had for reducing your carbon footprint on set, and it's significant. Hence why we're seeing a lot of cinema and TV kind of embracing the LEDs, because it's like we have to,
Yeah, but
right?
it's also
It just saves us so much money to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but also purely from a practicality point of view. I remember doing a shoot not too long ago where I lit everything as a video shoot, and I lit everything with LED panels, and it was portability and flexibility on location that enabled us to actually do this shoot in the location that we did it in, because it was just a matter of carrying out a bunch of LED panels rather than having to move big lights around all the time. And of course, the fact that they were battery powered just meant that we were totally flexible in like moving around the location as well. And I don't think that would have been. I know that particular shoot in that particular location simply wouldn't have been possible with bigger lights and bigger modifiers. And it wasn't the location where I would have worked. So, now the power thing, I can see that as a problem. Like, if you let's say you live in Florida and you're shooting outside, and and you're trying to overpower the sun, blah blah blah, and all of that. LEDs could be a problem. You might think like, well, actually, no, flash is the way to go because that's the only way I can do it. If you live in England, maybe not so much, because overpowering the sun basically means turning a light bulb on outside.
I've used my lights outside, for daylight shoots, where I'm using it as a key light and I'm just using the sun as a fill light. Yeah, it's definitely doable, but I can see where people are kind of hesitant, especially if you're like, I shoot a lot all over the place. I don't know how bright it's going to be and that sort of thing. But yeah, in that instance for that hair salon, yeah, it was a case of, let's just take the strobes and just cover ourselves. I mean, look, I could have just taken several meters of black velvet and just whacked that up in the window and we would have been squared away. Cool. But but that was the only time I shot flash last year, which is wild. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, for those of us listening and watching this, who are thinking, oh, maybe I'm used to shooting flash, but maybe LED might be a really good idea. Now, the secondary impact that decision has is, of course, on camera settings, because for those of us being used to flash, it's a fairly simple, straightforward way of setting up your camera. You go like, okay, well, sync speed is 1/200th of a second, shabang. Everything else hangs under that. In what way does your approach to your camera setting specifically change when you change to LEDs? Because now
really
you
good
approach
question.
that.
Really good question. Yeah. And I think a lot of people kind of struggle with this, because you're absolutely right. You nailed it, right? I mean, as a studio shooter, my camera was like, so I think I have my shutter speed at 125th of a second, like ISO 100. Like, they didn't move, and they don't move for months.
Exactly right.
Right? That's just that's
That's
it.
it.
Because I'm in control of the lights. I have the juice to be able to do that. Sure, I might want to change the f number around. Cool. I adjust my lights for my f number, but yeah, like the camera just does not move off ISO 100, 120 frames per second.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, then press here for the full episode in glorious Technicolor. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe.